All right. Welcome, everybody, to the next Utini Roundtable book discussion. Tonight, we are going to be talking about Inferno Squad by Christie Golden. I've got a great panel of people here with me. Only four of us here tonight, running a bit of a skeleton crew. We were supposed to have Rick, but real life caught up with him, so you guys are stuck with us. Um, I would like to just kind of start this out the way that we start all of these out. So we're going to go around. Guys, just tell everyone your name, what you do for Utini, and then I would love it if you would rate this book on a 1 to 10. And don't tell us why yet. Just tell us what your rating is, and we'll get to that at the end once again and see if it changes at all. So let's start with you, Eric.
All right. Hey guys, I'm Eric. I'm the blog editor-in-chief at Utini. Do a little writing for the magazine as well. And I am going to give Inferno Squad an 8.5.
All right. Heather, what about you?
So I'm Heather. I'm the social media manager. I will give Inferno Squad an 8.
All right. And Meg?
Hi, I'm Meg. I'm a writer for Utini, and I'm actually going to give the book a 6.
Okay, so we got some differences there. And I should say, my name is Charles. I am a writer and user analyst for Utini. And about once a month, I hop on here and do this. And I'm going to sit the fence and give this book a 7. So with that being said, let's just jump right in. There are a few things that I think are important to talk about to start off, just to get a good feel for everyone's experience whenever they kind of dove into this book. Is who here read the physical copy versus who listened to the audiobook? So did anyone here listen to the audiobook?
Nope, physical for me. That I got in my Utini subscription. Just a side note.
Okay.
Plugged
Fantastic.
in.
Anyone else? Audiobook?
I read physical copy.
Physical? Okay, I actually did the audiobook this first time around, so I won't harp on it too much, but I heard really good things, and I will say that it was a really good audiobook as things go, even as Star Wars books go. Janina Gavankar, who plays Iden Versio, she actually did the entire narration, and so it was really cool to actually get to hear Iden. I have a few other thoughts on it that I can get into later, but the other big question, just to get a good idea of what y'all's experience was, is who here had already played the Battlefront II video game campaign and was familiar with Iden, familiar with Dell, and everyone?
Yeah, I played it. I've had Battlefront 2 for a bit. Earlier this year, I think I played it, so it had been a span of time, but yeah, played the campaign, knew the characters, had the voices in my head, like went back to look at a few gameplay videos just to get mannerisms.
Sure.
But yeah, kind of already knew the ending then, as it were.
Sure.
I don't remember when the game came out, but I do remember I actually finished this book about a day before the video game release.
Okay. All right. So it was kind of flipped for you, and you were revisiting it this time.
Yeah. I
Okay.
read the book first, and then I played the campaign.
Cool. All right. And Meg, had you made it through the campaign?
I actually read the book first,
Okay.
and I'm still only halfway through the campaign. I haven't played in like 3 months, but
Ooh,
yeah.
all right. We might. So Meg is
had
going
your
to be
chance.
leaving us before this is over, or she's going to not have to play the rest of that campaign.
It's not a required list for Utini when you get hired.
Yeah, no, we're not going to talk too in depth about the game, but I think it is important to kind of figure out, where these characters go after this book as well. So we'll touch on it, but we'll try to stay, I don't know, maybe a little spoiler free, or maybe we'll just ruin it for everyone. So
Let's just ruin it.
well, let's just see where things go. That's what we normally do. Great. So let's jump right in. Just to give an idea of the overall plot, maybe some of the people listening, have not gotten a chance to read this book, and they're just kind of checking this out to hear our thoughts. Basically, the story follows the formation of Inferno Squad, which is Iden Versio and 3 other Imperials that you get to meet later. And they're essentially tasked with destroying what is left of Saw Gerrera's partisans, who are now going by the name of the Dreamers, because this story takes place after Rogue One. So Jeddah City has already been destroyed. Saw Gerrera is dead, but his ideologies, his teachings kind of live on. And the Empire isn't so keen on that, so they are trying to destroy what's left. Now, I think the best way to really talk about any of these books in the way that I normally conduct these things is just to talk about characters one at a time. And so what I would like to do is start off with Iden Versio. So she is kind of our window into this story. She is the first person that we meet, and she's who I would say is the main character, even though we do kind of get inside of everyone's head. And essentially, she's a skilled pilot. She was elected leader of Inferno Squad, which was formed by her father, Admiral Versio. And really, the first question that comes to mind is just, do you guys like having an Imperial as a main character? Like, do you like getting inside of the helmet, as it were, and what does that add to the story for you? Heather, let's come to you first for this one.
I definitely love it. I'm a big Empire fan, and I think we already have a lot of content that's focused on the good guys, which isn't bad, but this is definitely a good change of pace.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Meg?
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of refreshing to have a story that's kind of told from the other perspective. I think it definitely adds, you're a little bit more empathetic to the other side. So I think that's really important to have that kind of you're really seeing a war from the other side, which is important. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, what are your thoughts?
I say, yeah, I enjoy it. I'm not a huge fan of the bureaucracy of the Empire. So, like some of the Thrawn novels, some of the stuff you get into with like the chain of command on Star Destroyers, some of that gets a little dense for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
But to have Iden be like the special squad, like this, I'm a sucker for small squad stories. So having that really made it more accessible, and like Heather and Meg were saying, to get the other side of the conflict is super interesting without having anyone that is so morally bankrupt that it makes it impossible. So
Sure.
that's good.
Sure, and this story actually does a really great job, and we're gonna kind of get into this a little bit later, but it does a great job of really making you see things from multiple sides and understand that there is a good and bad to every side here. There's not necessarily a one straightforward choice that is the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I kind of agree with you guys. It was nice to see things from their end, or from their side rather.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mentioned that Inferno Squad was essentially started by Iden's father, who is Admiral Versio. So he's a very high-ranking military member in the Empire, and he kind of formed this squad, and he kind of raised Iden from a very young age in a very militaristic way. It seemed, at least that's what was described. He was, a bit cold, very stern. There certainly wasn't a typical, if you will, father-daughter relationship there. It was very much wrapped up in the Empire. Now, how much do you guys think Iden's relationship with the Empire, or the idea of the Empire, is bound up in her relationship with her father? Because we actually see at one point when she's being questioned by Staven, she cites her hatred for her own father as her evidence as to why she's apparently willing to betray the Empire. So there's clearly a connection there. But what did you guys read into with their relationship? Eric, let's start with you this time.
I think that it's not too far of a stretch to say that, especially in fiction, but even in real life, most characters are kind of based around a lot of their upbringing. It is inescapable. So the idea that Iden is so tied to the Empire is, of course, tied to her father. She was raised from the day she was born, knowing the Empire was right, knowing that that was the goal, that was the lofty goal she could achieve, was to be part of the Empire. She was never given that affection from day one. So it's interesting in this story that she would talk about sometimes missing that affection because she never had it to miss in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe the farther away she got from Versio, which is a little more evident in the game, the more she can see the roots of empathy as opposed to what she was raised with. So the idea that she can't separate the Empire from her father, I think, rings absolutely true. And as you said, when she is citing evidence later on in the book, a really crucial part of the story, that while, yes, she's doing her duty, she is, at the end of the day, always serving her father.
Yeah, absolutely. Meg, what do you think about that?
Well, Well, it's kind of like Lost Stars. I know we always talk about this book, but
'Cause it's the best.
We'll find a way.
it is. But they pretty much join the Empire or know from a young age that they want to because it's pretty much all they know or all they're steered toward or all they're told that they should do. And only when they have the experience within that and kind of are old enough to form their own opinions and kind of realize like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. It's only then that they kind of realize they would rather not support the Empire anymore. So it's kind of the same thing here. It's like when Aiden is raised to know only one thing, and until she can kind of decide for herself if that's really what she wants or not, she doesn't know anything different. So I think it's definitely like Eric said, her upbringing and the kind of ideals that her father has kind of instilled in her. So,
Heather, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all that. I definitely think her father is a factor when it comes to her loyalty, but I think it has more to do with like where she was born and raised, and like what Meg said, if you were born and raised on an Imperial planet, I actually forget the name of the planet, but I know that it is.
Vardos.
Vardos,
Yeah, a mostly Imperial planet. I mean, if you were born and raised at a place like that, then it's kind of like, I was born and raised in this town, and so I am automatically loyal to this place. But if, say, the mayor decided that they wanted to drop bombs on us right now, I would be like, hey, what the heck? Maybe maybe there's something going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that, Heather, because it almost ties back to like Luke, because the only reason he joined the Empire was because they came to Tatooine and killed his aunt and uncle. Like, if they hadn't come to his geographical home and changed his mind so viscerally, would any of it have happened in the first place?
Yes, exactly.
And that is a great segue into a question that I do have. But I'm going to hold off 1 second because I do have one more question about Aiden. And unfortunately, we are going to dive a little bit into what goes on in the game, Meg. But if you're halfway through the campaign, I think you're okay so far. So obviously, it's not really a secret at this point that in the Battlefront II campaign, Aiden eventually does join the rebellion. She leaves the Empire and joins the rebellion. In this book, we see her essentially pretending to do that,
Sorry.
right? Heather is just straight up Imperial over there.
Empire did nothing wrong.
And so we see it happen pretty abruptly in that game. I don't remember how many missions in it was. My plan at the beginning of this month was to actually get through this audiobook and replay the entire campaign, and that did not happen. I finished the audiobook like a day ago. But it was pretty abrupt. It was, 2 to 3 mission kind of turnaround. And a lot of people did feel that way. Did this story serve as an effective groundwork to make that fall more believable? Or if, like Heather and Meg, you guys read the book beforehand, whenever you did get into the game, did you maybe not feel that it was abrupt at all? Did you feel like you saw kind of the seeds being sown in this story? Meg, I'm going to start with you this time.
So when I did play the game, I did get to that part, by the way.
Good. All right. We're all right.
Cool, great.
Even though I'd read the book, I still thought it was very abrupt, and I kind of had to stop for a second and I was kind of like, this happened really fast. This seems kind of off a little bit. But having read the book kind of made it make more sense. It did happen quickly still, but I still kind of understood like, oh, she's already been exposed to, other things that have happened. There was more that kind of built up to this. So it wasn't like completely out of nowhere, but in terms of like the timeline of the campaign, it did kind of just happen randomly. But
okay, which I think a bit has to do with the medium. It can't be that long of a game,
right.
But it's interesting that it still felt that way to you.
Yeah.
So, Heather, did you feel the same way?
If there was one thing in this entire book that's relevant to the actual game, it's the part when Aiden comes back and finds that Gideon has killed all of the dreamers. And I think just because of that part, afterwards when I played the campaign, it kind of made sense that she would make that turnaround. But I think if I didn't get that part of the book, and I just went straight to the game, I just would have been furious. Like, why would she just betray the Empire for no reason like that? I mean, just
Mhm.
because she saw one thing, she had to have seen a lot of things in her life. But I think the fact that, they've been living with the Dreamers for a very long time and she actually grew an attachment towards them, which, by the way, is a sign of a bad soldier. I'm sorry, but I mean, you come in to do this one mission and you do the one thing that you shouldn't do is,
So we should have
care
sent
about these
Heather.
people.
I'm learning way more about
Yeah.
Heather than I am about Aiden during this.
Heather would have just gone in there and Stoneface killed everybody on day one. Like,
Yeah. Heather and Gideon.
Well,
get it?
you gotta
Fine.
get the information out of them first and then kill them. But I'm just saying, these are it's supposed to be
Well,
like a
duh.
special ops group, right? They're supposed to just go in, get the job done, and get out. And they're all like getting these attached feelings and stuff. And I'm like, you were specifically chosen for this job, and you're like ruining the job. But anyways, what was I talking about? So,
you
yeah,
just got on a roll about murder and
Yeah.
I know. Anyways, I'm very tired. I'm on my 4th cup of coffee. Anyways, like, yeah, if I didn't see that part of the book, it would have made no sense at all whatsoever. But since I read the book first, I guess there's an excuse for that.
Okay. All right. So it helped you out a little bit. Eric, let's come to you. What do you think?
I guess for me, when I played the game, no part of my mind actually thought she wouldn't turn to the rebellion at some point, just because of the nature of video games and the nature of Star Wars stories on a massive scale. You know, like I guess I just went in with the subconscious assumption that would happen. So when the turn happened, I was like, okay, it happened quicker than I thought. But I was like, okay, cool. Now it's just part of the game. Side note: the fact that we don't have an Iden Rebel skin for multiplayer is ridiculous. But I think that what the book did for me was at least give her again a little more of that sense of fallibility, a little more of that like, okay, she's had thoughts before. Ish, So, I mean, granted, in the campaign, if I remember correctly, she doesn't fully turn until she sees like how quickly the Empire will turn on her. If I remember, like when she was trying to escape someplace and stormtroopers were like attacking her, in my mind, that was the final switch. Was like, oh, I'm not even safe from this.
Yeah, that was her
Empire.
home planet.
Yeah,
That's what I was talking about
They'll
earlier.
take down Vardos. Yeah, right. They'll take down Vardos. So that switch, even if without the book, frankly, I didn't think it was that undeserved, because the people you were loyal to for decades bombed your own home without a second thought. Like, sometimes empathy is really hard for people, so you can't put yourself in someone else's shoes until your own backyard's on fire, which sucks and doesn't speak to a great person, but it's still believable enough.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great point. I do want to come back to one of the last points that you made, which was when you kind of brought up Luke and Tatooine and how it took the Empire kind of coming to his door, because in a way we saw kind of the reverse of that with Gideon Hask. So with the second member of Inferno Squad, who was essentially, I mean, he's really just another pilot, soldier, head of his class, like kind of just, he was also Iden. In a lot of ways, he was almost like the mirror image of Iden. And so it was interesting to see them have sort of a similar trajectory for so long, and then for them to part so drastically more towards the end of their story. But what we know about Hask is that essentially he had his parents killed in a rebel attack, and that was when he joined the Empire and kind of became very gung-ho Imperial, and that's how his entire life kind of got to the point that it did. So it's very similar essentially to the Empire coming to Tatooine, killing Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and Luke deciding to go join Old Ben and the rest of the Rebel Alliance. So does that story make you sympathize at all with Hask and some of the frankly awful decisions or very merciless decisions that he made in this story? Eric, let's start with you this time.
I don't know if sympathize is the right word, but understand, I think. Because in the weirdest way, Hask kind of reminds me of that guy in high school that knew he was going to join the military right out of school because it gave him an excuse to legally kill people. like because he always had that beast inside of him, and he saw that was the way to let it out. And I think that whatever his reasoning was, like that's how people get radicalized. And I think that was honestly in praise of Golden, one of the most kind of realistic parts of this whole book is that warfare throughout time has been people being shown atrocities done to their own people by others and said, don't you want to fight back? Don't you want revenge? And that's how people can turn you. I mean, whether it be video propaganda, whether it be stories, whether it be actual battles, whether it be watching your parents die. I mean, it's a tale as old as time, as horrific as it is. So I don't sympathize with what Gideon did. I don't sympathize with what he became, but I think it tracks, which is the scary part.
Sure. Yeah, no, Golden did a great job of making him a believable character, as kind of monstrous as he was at times. Meg, what did you think about Hask? Were you able to kind of get into his head and understand why he was doing some of the things he was doing?
Definitely. I think you can tell a story is told really well if you can kind of see things clearly from both sides. And this book did that really well. I think that knowing where he's coming from and why he is the way that he is kind of makes you able to, understand like what is this pain that he's feeling? Why is he so passionate about, supporting an organization that seems so evil to us sometimes. But he's been through some of the same things that people on the other side have. So it's like, I don't remember. I must have been reading a forum or something where someone posed the question. This is a long time ago, but they kind of asked, like, have you ever thought about how many people actually died when the first Death Star was destroyed? And the rebels did that, and that could kind of be seen as like, almost like a major like terrorist thing.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's lost stars to bring it back again. Like that's a huge part of that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's like, especially in the context of war, like bad things happen on both sides, and it's terrible, but that's kind of how it is, so.
Yeah, no, for sure. Heather, what do you think about it?
His backstory, the reason why he hates the rebels, it seems like pretty cliche, but if you think about it, that's like the best reason you can have for hating the rebels. It's better than having no reason at all. So, I mean, I'm cool with it.
Oh, Heather is Hask.
Yep.
She got to like what he did at the end of the book, and she was like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Don't call me Hask because he is like a dumb jock. Because he's pretty dumb too. But whatever, I'll get to that later. Next.
Okay.
Great pilot.
Yeah, so I mean, Heather had alluded to it earlier, but essentially what Hask does at the end of this book was really shocking for me personally. I mean, he basically killed everyone off screen, which was also an interesting decision, and you can comment on that as well. But did that surprise you? Did it surprise you that it happened? Did it surprise you how it happened and it being off screen? And did it surprise you given what you had already seen and knew about Hask as a character? Heather, let's start with you this time since you feel so strongly about this.
Okay, yeah. So the reason why I say he's stupid too is because he made
didn't do it
very
sooner.
No, not that. Guys, I'm not that bad.
They
Calm
shouldn't have
down.
made it
Let
past
me.
page 6.
Oh my God, let me talk. Jeez, you guys are just attacking me. All hail the emperor. Okay, so he made a very, very important decision without a direct order from an authority figure. And that is a big no-no. Don't do that. So, it was a big shock to me only because, like, Aiden was the one in charge. If she didn't say kill him, then, don't do it.
Right.
That's really it.
Okay. All right. And did it surprise you at all coming from Hask whenever you first read it?
Coming from Hask, no, because he seemed pretty sadistic. The fact that he was the one who did it, no, I wasn't surprised. The fact that it happened at all, yeah, I was a bit surprised at that.
Okay. All right. Eric, what do you think?
I was pretty shocked. I mean, I was not ready to let go of Pico. That's for sure. Justice for Pico. Oh my god. I love that little man. Little old Shadrafan. But yeah, I think what Heather said reigns true is that if someone was gonna do it, have it being Hask makes sense. And again, his personality does fit the kind of guy that would go, "Oh, oops," you know.
Yeah.
And what surprises me more, I guess, is the fact that there wasn't any huge consequence with the Admiral or with Inferno Squad, because he did not directly disobey, but he acted without orders.
Should
And
have
I
been
feel
the
like
death penalty.
yes, you know what, Heather, I'm down with that. I'm down with this death. But yeah, it was a shocking thing that I think the good purpose of it was, again, another stroke of genius by Golden here. This book had a very high risk of us ending being like, oh, these good little Imperial guys just trying to get out. And she's like, no, there's still the Empire. Like, let us not forget in the closing pages of this book, as we're wrapping everything up, that they're still the bad guys. You know, so I think that was very important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Meg, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. Especially because you're ending this story and there's still another story about how they do eventually leave the Empire, but not yet. So the story has to kind of end like, you know, with that reminder that they're still on the side that they have been on this whole time. Because I think you can have very good character development and have people change a lot, but still, you know, their loyalty is where it was from the beginning. And I think that was told very well, story-wise. As for those deaths happening, you know, off screen, we'll say, I think that added a lot of, I think the shock factor. I think it needed to be there because you don't know what's going to happen. There's no like tension building up to that really in that moment. It kind of happens, and you come back and you're like, oh, this is terrible. I got to know all these characters that I liked, and now they're gone. I read this a long time ago, so I wish I remembered my initial reaction better, but I was definitely surprised and obviously upset, but I think it needed to happen that way. But the fact that Hask did it didn't surprise me at all. So
Sure. Yeah, no, with it, you know, without us actually seeing it happen, you know, it was very sudden, and you're right, it definitely added that shock factor. But I also thought after I read it, I was like, I can only imagine what it would have been like for them to actually lay out what happened, you know, and for you to lose those characters individually, rapid fire, almost in a Rogue One type situation, but with people who, you know, characters doing it who you sympathize with probably more, or empathize with at least probably more than Darth Vader, you know.
Or Krennic.
Or Krennic. But yeah, I thought it's a really interesting choice. So let's talk about the third member. We're going to get through every member of Inferno Squad. The third member that you would have at least known about if you played the game first, who is Del Meeko. And Del is essentially kind of the tech-savvy guy. He was kind of an everyday trooper. I think they said he started out as a stormtrooper, became a shore trooper, moved to something else. You know, essentially worked his way up as an average Joe and found himself in this special ops squad. I need some help with this character, guys. Okay, what outside of being like some you know, comic relief from time to time, making some sarcastic comments, and essentially being the one who kept everyone in contact, like what did Del do? Like what did the character of Del bring to this story? Why is he in Inferno Squad? What was going on with him? And just I just want anyone's thoughts on this. So feel free to
I
jump
actually
in.
think I might have a good reason for that.
All right, let's hear it.
So since this book came out like shortly before the game, I want to believe that they were both made with each other in mind. So even though he
sure,
didn't
yeah.
play a large enough role in the book,
He
um,
does
I
eventually.
think, yeah, I think they wanted to make him pretty neutral in the book so that when Aiden defects in the game, there's someone who's able to pretty much tag along with her. I mean, obviously, it couldn't be Gideon. What's her name? Sin. She's gone. So I think that Dell was really the last person who could go with her, and I don't think they wanted him established as much in the book because if he was too bad, then it wouldn't really make sense. And I don't know. I just think that they were thinking long term.
Okay, so it's kind of a multimedia
Mhm.
reason, and he needed to be present. Any other thoughts on that, y'all?
Yeah, I mean, I ride or die for Del Mico, man. I think I think what I really like about him is that, and I think this is also his purpose in the squad, is he is our window as an audience into a person in the Empire and in Inferno Squad who is both very competent, but also has pretty distinct empathy from the start. Like, he is never about mass chaos, he's never about mass murder. He's there to make sure everyone's okay. He wants to make sure everything goes well, the mission goes right. I mean, he's not totally benevolent. He is on the Empire's side, but I think, like others said, he very believably defects in the campaign of Battlefront 2. And I think that in Inferno Squad, those seeds are absolutely laid. So he is the person that Aiden can look at as an older person in the squad, yet still her inferior in rank, but being like, oh, you can be an empathetic person and still be, it doesn't make you weak. You know, Dell is not a weak character. So I think honestly, I think he serves Aiden more to be like, you can still care for people and be as strong as a Versio.
Okay. Meg, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I think it's important to have a character who's kind of not to any extreme, and it kind of just is along for the ride, but also serves a greater purpose maybe later on. And I definitely think he was there. The book was setting up for him to play a greater role later, is definitely what I got from that.
Golden was giving us the slow play.
Yeah.
That's what was going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me ask you guys this, because I may have heard this wrong. I agree throughout, the majority of the story, Dell is very much one of the nicer people in the squad, if you will. Does he not help Hask kill everybody? I mean, whenever Aiden gets back, he's standing there with a blaster, isn't he? I mean, I assumed that he kind of helped. Do you guys remember taking it that way?
I'm checking it.
Eric's actually researching.
I honestly don't remember. When did the game come out? Like a year ago?
Yeah.
The game came out. Yeah, last holiday season, did it not? Okay, yeah. Here it is.
My memory only goes back to like 5 days.
Oh yeah, Dell was leaning. Okay, from the novel, Dell was leaning against the ramp. His head rested on one arm, cradling his face. A blaster dangled limply from the fingers of his other hand. His body was taut as if he were in pain. So yes, possibly, but my only thing is that it doesn't say the blaster is. I mean, I guess it had been a while, so the blaster wouldn't still be smoking.
Yeah.
So we definitely had a blaster in. Hask had a blaster too, but he was grinning, waving to Aiden as she pulled up. So.
Okay, so it's kind of open to interpretation.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. All right. And maybe if he did do it, I don't know, he said he's cradling his head or cradling his face.
Yeah,
maybe if he did it, he's really torn up about it. Yeah.
That's what I take from it.
Okay. All right. I think that's interesting. For me, honestly, the most interesting thing about Dell in this story was really just his relationship with Pia Cow and, kind of their work on the Golems. Yeah. And I mean, without Dell, we wouldn't really have gotten that time with Pia Cow, and I think he kind of added a lot to it. But okay, let's jump to the fourth member of Inferno Squad, who I didn't even realize was going to be in this book, because in the game she is not there, and there's a reason that she is not there, which we will get to. But Sign Marana, she was basically like the cryptologist and like a master linguist. She knew however many languages, 28, 29, and could write 7 or 8 more, and she had an eidetic memory, which was pretty interesting as well. I kind of was thinking of her in this book as like the Inferno Squad equivalent of the fifth Beatle, because she
Yes.
like just like
Yeah.
she was there and very instrumental, but you
Mhm.
don't really know about them. So what did Sign bring to the story for you guys? If you knew already from playing the game that she wasn't in the game, did that make you care less about her, or did it kind of add tension to the story to make you want to find out what happened and why she wasn't in the game? Eric, let's come to you first on this.
Yeah, she was first introduced, I definitely had the thought, oh, she's gonna die. That's gonna be sad because she's not in the campaign. Because I didn't think they'd have her defect, because a huge part of the game is defecting, so I don't think they would do that twice. So I did have the thought of, oh, am I just waiting for her to die? And I didn't really, because I wasn't anticipating it, because it was definitely gonna happen, so I didn't need to worry about it. So I could just let the story kind of tell me as it did. And I think the way they handled it was really horrible and beautiful. Like, I mean, a beautifully written, horrible circumstance, but I liked her character a lot. And the more I read, the more I was like, oh man, I'm gonna miss her, because I knew she was gonna go. It was kind of like maybe talking to a death row inmate in a way. Like, man, you're really cool. I'm gonna know you, but not for long.
The Green Mile.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Green Mile of Star Wars.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Meg, what do you think about that?
Weirdly, I had the feeling like from the beginning that she was going to die, even though I hadn't played the game yet. And I don't know why that is.
Too innocent to be an Imperial and stick around.
Maybe, I don't know, but so I kind of had this feeling like I think she's going to be the one to go, and she was. But I definitely think that was super important, because you need to see that other side of, oh, even the good guys do terrible things. So obviously that's why that was there. But I felt super bad about it. I really liked her character too. And I think Golden did a really good job of like making her likable, even though she's a member of the Empire, and then, she is no more, and that's terrible. But yeah, but I think that's definitely what her purpose was. But yeah, I'm still sad about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, me too. I thought she was the most likable one, honestly, out of all of them. Heather, what do you think about it?
I really liked her too. She was cute, and well, poor girl, she was kind of like stupid too when it came to being a soldier.
Yeah.
But
She's young.
yeah, and I think that's kind of what made her relatable to me, at least. I mean, she was pretty innocent to this whole thing. She was mostly carefree, kind of just rolling with the punches. It was just easier to put myself in her shoes. So her death hit me pretty hard when I first read it. And I think that's why it had to be her to show how ruthless this kind of stuff can be. I mean, out of all of them, she really was the one who was just, I don't think she even quite knew like what she was doing yet. She was kind of just put into this job, and, she had to do it, and, she just had bad luck, really.
I think there's also a poetic nature of her death, with like the Empire is kind of about not knowing about other people, not thinking about the suffering of others in pursuit of your own goals, right? And I think that there's something poetic that she died because she had too much knowledge. Like, her knowledge of other languages, of other cultures, is ultimately what gave her up. And that's why she was found out and killed, because she was too empathetic, because she was too knowledgeable about people that were different than her. And that's why she had to die. And I think that statement was really hard, and kind of reinforced the fact that, like, maybe you're useful if you know that, but if you actually believe any of it, you're not going to survive in the Empire.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I never thought about it like that, but I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she dies in a pretty awful way because she accidentally outed herself as knowing these languages, which made everyone suspicious of her. But why did, in your mind, why did she decide to die the way that she did? She essentially gave herself up right at the end. And was it really to protect the rest of her crew, or was it because she really couldn't go on with the memories that she had sort of accrued through this entire experience? Mainly Sidori's death that clearly affected her very strongly, but really any of the things that they'd gone through, knowing that she had this eidetic memory and wouldn't be able to forget even the smallest bit of any of it. What do you think was her biggest factor in making the decision that she needed to really essentially sacrifice herself? Meg, let's come to you first.
Okay, this is a hard
It's tough.
question.
I
Yeah.
know.
I mean,
Not letting you off easy.
I know. I want to say a little bit of both, but honestly, I really think it was to protect everyone else.
Okay.
That just is, from what we know of her character, that just seems like the most that seems like what she would do, and a good reason why. Yeah, I feel like not being able to live with those memories is definitely something that would make sense, but I also feel like she would have been able to be okay with that. I think more so she was just trying to make sure that everyone else is going to be okay.
Okay. Heather, do you agree?
I really want to. Well, I mean, it could be both reasons, because I really do want to believe that she did it to protect her squad, but at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that she actually really did care for, what was his name?
Sidori.
Sordori. Yeah, because I mean, there was that split moment at the, what was it, a museum? Man, it's been so long. Um, where they set up the bomb, there was that split moment
Yeah.
where she wanted to go back for him, and if she really did prioritize the mission and the team, she wouldn't have hesitated like that. So actually, she might be torn between the two, and like she was a good character, but that's also why I say that, she was kind of a bad soldier in that way. This whole team, maybe it's just really difficult living with the enemy for so long, but it seems like a lot of these characters had this big struggle. She went in saying like, "Hey, I'm gonna pretend to care for this guy," and it's like, "Oh crap, I really do care for this guy." Like that's not supposed to happen if you're a specialist. But yeah, it really sucks. So maybe it was just for both reasons, really.
Okay. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Heather kind of nailed it for me, and Meg as well. I think it's both. I think it is definitely. I mean, her final words are for the Empire, and she's. I think part of that rings true. Part of that is to keep up the cover so that no one else gets hurt. I think the idea of her friends not getting hurt trumped the mission itself. Granted, they both had the same end there, but I think that her sacrifice at the end was like, okay, if they just take me, then Aiden and Dell and Gideon are safe. So she did that, and I also think that she had a bit of honor in her too, of like, this is my mistake. I slipped up, and the last thing I'm gonna do is own that mistake and accept the consequences. And kind of her emotional maturity at that moment kind of took over. And then I think there's also the emotional responses of getting rid of those memories and also running on Aiden's blade so that she didn't have to endure the 7 hours that it took the Dreamers to kill the other. I forgot his name earlier in the novel.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they were ruthless with that guy.
Yeah, so you're avoiding unbelievably painful torture and death, which, I mean, gold star for that. But you're also saving your friends, So
you're saying it was a win-win-win-win.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I think it is a little bit of both, and that's kind of why I posed the question. But I think that her goal in that moment was to save the rest of her team and to protect the rest of her team. But I think she was okay with making the decision to die because she was going to be purged of all these horrible things that she would otherwise have to live the rest of her life with. So she didn't really make it into the video game, and that means that she didn't get to the point where she could have chosen to be like Hask and stick with the Empire, or be like Aiden and Dell and defect to the rebel alliance. So if she had made it to that point, where do you see her ending up? Heather, what do you think?
I think she would have defected too. Oh, my screen went black. Okay. Um, Mostly because, like like I said before, she's still young and innocent, trying to find herself, and the fact that she hesitated in going back for Sidori, shows that she does have compassion, even if it is the enemy.
Mhm.
And I would think that it's easier to defect if you have people alongside you.
Mhm.
So if she saw that, Dell and Aiden were defecting, especially Aiden is their leader, I think she would have followed them.
All right, Eric, do you agree?
I do 100%. I think that she would have probably also been the initial voice of the defection. I think even before Aiden and Dell in the game, um, and would have gone with them without question. Also, because she didn't make it into the game, she didn't get an actor to represent her likeness. And I would just like to put out that I had Letitia Wright, who was Shuri in Black Panther in my head during this whole thing
Okay.
for her.
Oh.
So, because like I could easily look up the pictures, but I'm like, who would she be? And I'm like, cool, she's a young scientist. She's kind of quick, has that kind of toughness, but also has that emotion. So, Letitia Wright, you got the job.
I like that.
All right, and Meg, does she defect or does she stay with the Empire?
I think definitely she would have, because she would have followed everyone else. I mean, with everything that they kind of went through together, as a squad, if everyone else was doing it, I think she would have too.
Okay, yeah, I'm kind of like mind with you guys. I think she would have as well. So I want to touch on Garrick Versio, or Admiral Versio, who is Aiden's father, who kind of this very cold, demanding figure. As I said, he's not very fatherly to Aiden whatsoever. He's more of her commanding officer, if you will, in life, I guess, rather than just in military things. And he made a really interesting decision at the end of this book. And I think he makes another very interesting decision that we don't have to talk in detail about at the end of the Battlefront II campaign. And both of those kind of make you question what his ultimate motive is, or what his priority is. Is he actually a family man who's really bad at showing it? Or is he just through and through an Imperial? And why do you think he is, whichever one you think he is? Eric, what do you think?
So the thing about Gary is that he likes to have the cold exterior, and it works, but it slips so many times in crucial moments, not in like in an unprofessional way, but when your choice is to be cruel or not be cruel, with Aiden specifically and his family, he usually chooses not to be. So I would say he's not a great family man, but I think that is where his heart is. I think that his decision to tell Aiden's mother the truth about her mission before she passed is huge. That he said, I didn't want your mother to die thinking you were a traitor. And he made that decision against protocol, against everything else. Like, that was pretty big. And also, I think even during the training of Inferno Squad in general, like, he wasn't as hard on Aiden as I assumed he was going to be. He wasn't as mean. He's still an Imperial. He still has that hardness to it. But I think at the end of the day, as opposed to maybe some other Imperial families, I think he really does love Aiden. At the end of it all, I mean, he married an artist, for God's sake. Like, when he was younger, he married a painter. He married a woman that was in touch with that sort of emotion. So I don't think you do that if you're as completely cut off as like a Tarkin.
Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
He's still evil. He's still a bad dude. I want to just end with that.
Let me be clear. He sucks. Meg, what do you think?
I have to agree with Eric, definitely. But I feel like I really enjoyed having a character like this who was still definitely terrible, but who there was this, warmer part of him that you kind of saw a little bit. So like he's not totally, cold and cut off. And I think we kind of needed that in a story like this, to have a high-ranking Imperial who is terrible, but you also can tell that he kind of cares a little bit, because it goes with, the whole, not everyone is all good and all bad. I mean, there are characters like that, but you kind of have to have that dynamic. But yeah, I think he cared as much as he knew how to, or as much as he knew how to show it. That's kind of what I got from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Heather, what do you think? Was he a poor commanding officer?
Damn it, Gary.
Gary V. You going to poker night? That's what I'm saying.
Sabak night.
Wow, of course. Oh man, he cleared them all out. Gary.
I was going to say that he seemed kind of flip-floppy to me, but I don't know how I totally forgot about Aiden's mom and him relaying the message and everything. Now that you guys pointed out, he definitely does have a sweet spot for his family. I can totally see that now. The reason I was gonna say he was flip-floppy was it kind of seemed like getting into the Meg, why didn't you play the campaign?
Just go ahead, I'll be fine.
Okay.
You will be.
So when Aiden defects, it seems like Garrick just keeps going along with his job. And when I played the game, I noticed that on the Battle of Jakku, when he was losing and Aiden gets to him, all of a sudden he has a change of heart, like, oh, I'm losing. You know what? I was so proud of you. I was totally wrong. Yeah, like I thought it was too convenient, but like now that you're bringing up all these points where his soft spots show when it comes around Aiden, maybe he just felt like that was a really good moment to come out. So I can respect that now.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, I'm generally in agreement with all of you guys. I think you brought up some good points, and now
we're all right all the time.
I know. I literally,
cool.
you guys
How
just
lucky.
you guys just convince me of whatever you're saying, even if it's the opposite of what someone else just said. That's why I'm so good at these things. I just agree with everything.
It's incredible.
Kidding. So let's flip and talk about the leader, if you will, of the Dreamers rather than the leader of Inferno Squad. So let's talk about the mentor, aka Lux Bonteri, the same Lux Bonteri who is from the Clone Wars. We saw a couple of times he kind of popped in and out of the story. And I guess my big question here is, why Lux Bonteri? What about his backstory from the Clone Wars, or what we knew about him, made him a good choice for this role, outside of just name recognition and tying things together, making this multimedia? Why Lux Bonteri? Heather, do you have an answer for me?
It's one of those things where can I spoil Solo?
Spoil
yeah.
everything.
Okay, might as well, right? It's one of those things like
heads
where
up, it's coming.
you're watching Solo and you're kind of just going through the motions, and at the end, you're kind of shocked when you see Darth Maul, and then you really think about it and you're like, you know what, considering the timing and the fact that they're dealing with the crime syndicate, it's actually very fitting. And that's the exact same emotion that I got from that reveal with Lux. Because, this whole time, the mentor, he's just this mysterious guy. And when he was revealed to be Lux Bonteri, what's funny is I think there was actually some build up to that. He was talking about, oh, one time I was like in love with a Jedi and this one girl, named Stila. And I was like, no way. And then he's revealed to be Lux, and it kind of just blew me away. And I was like, oh my God, it makes perfect sense. This is the Dreamers. He worked alongside with Saw, and it makes sense that he would be carrying on Saw's thing, and he has all of this knowledge. So like I was super excited to see that reveal, and it's just I think it's totally fitting 100%.
Okay, awesome. Eric, did you feel the same way?
I really wished I had remembered who the hell Lux Bonteri
Right?
was before this book, because I was like, I'll tell you what I did. I was an idiot, guys. I was an idiot because I don't know if you know this about me, but this past year I have become weirdly obsessed with Bail Organa. Like, I just want him in everything. And they're like, well, he was a senator and no one's supposed to know he's alive. I'm like, oh, no way. Like, did he escape Alderaan? And has he been secret? He was in Rogue One. Like, I was so stoked for the mentor to secretly be Bail Organa, even though it makes no sense.
It is Star Wars. I mean,
right? So my problem was my expectations were that high that I wanted him to be the mentor, and he wasn't. And I mean, because I watched all of Clone Wars, so Lux was there. He just clearly just made no impact on my brain. So when that reveal happened, I was like, oh, cool. I mean, yeah, that's neat. It's pretty cool. I mean, I like, and then I like researched back to who he was. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I mean, it's a good fit. So really it's on my memory more than anything. But for you guys and you teeny listeners everywhere, you better believe if there's a Mandalorian episode where Bail Organa shows up, you'll know I'm losing my goddamn mind. Just in the future.
Oh, okay.
So he wasn't Bail Organa is my main
That's your complaint. Okay, Meg, what did you think about it?
Well, I swear I watched all of the Clone Wars and I had no idea who he was. So I also
what's
have
wrong with you people? You call yourselves fans?
He didn't have a big role.
Fake fans. We're just fake fans.
Yeah,
He was what, probably in a handful of episodes tops, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well that makes me feel a little better.
I think. Don't
But-
See. I'll look
Yeah.
it up. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I had to look up who he was, and once I did, I was kind of like, okay, sure. But I wish I would have like known who that was in that moment for, during the reveal, because it just would have made it so much better for me. But if you had known that going into it, I'm sure that it was a reveal that would satisfy you. But it definitely fits, considering his significance in the episodes that he was in, and coming back to this. But also I like when things connect and it makes the universe connect in different things in Star Wars land. So it made me happy.
He's that guy. Oh, sorry, I'm on Wikipedia right now. There's 6 episodes. 1, 2, 3, or 7 episodes.
So
And
are
he was
you
the
realizing it for the second time?
well, because I was like, oh, he was in Clone Wars, but now I'm actually reading the whole thing, and he was the Ahsoka love interest thing.
Oh,
He was originally introduced, as an Ahsoka. Like, Ahsoka met him, and he was the son of the senator of a separatist planet, and was very of separatist mind, and then eventually made his way into Steela and Saw's group. So he totally flipped sides.
Wish I would have Meg and I both missed out on the same reveal.
Okay, but I mean,
not your fault, Christy. Not your fault.
No, and it's nice. It's nice to have some reveals and things like that, Easter eggs that are kind of more hardcore, you know?
Yeah, we work for this company and we missed it. So
Yeah.
readers.
I don't know what you're talking about. I had chills when I got to that part.
The pro murder person on our podcast.
You act like I've actually murdered people, man.
We don't know.
It wasn't really a
don't know.
person.
Okay, so he's really the only member of the Dreamers that I wanted to really talk about, just given that there are a million of them, right?
Pico?
I mean,
we're not gonna talk about Pico.
dude, I know.
We
So we got Staven, we've got Dana, we've got Nadreen, we've got Cave, Halia, Rue, Sidori, Piakau, Azen. I mean, we could be here all night.
Although I do want to say, I am a person that gets very overwhelmed by lots of named characters that I don't know and that are probably all going to die, so I don't care about them. I got a distinct personality off of pretty much all these characters. Like, sometimes the names I needed, like, My Perfect World is that each book has a dramatis personae in the front of it with a little picture next to them, so I know the species and everything. But like I thought each of them were very well fleshed out for what they had to be. And justice for Pico forever. I need more of those little guys. And that's
I feel bad because I hardly remember any of the Dreamers. Like I before today, I couldn't name a single one.
Pico, the Shadra fan.
Yeah.
Who's in
That
Resistance?
was the mechanic,
There's one of
right?
those. Yeah, because there's one of those in Resistance now.
Is
Oh,
there?
yeah,
I didn't
okay.
know that. I
Yeah,
haven't been watching it, but
it's fine.
Okay, so you guys heard it here first. Justice for Pico.
Yes.
But so we're about an hour in here, and I want to kind of get to some of these hard-hitting questions that I like to kind of end on, kind of the big overarching questions. Number one being, we've touched on this a lot, kind of it's easy to get into the mindset of kind of all sides in this story, whether that's the Dreamers, whether it's Inferno Squad, whoever it is. But as the reader, whose side do you think we were supposed to be on at the end of this story? Are we supposed to be sympathizing with the Dreamers, who are basically fighting back against this oppressive empire? So they have a good, a good reason to be doing what they're doing, but they're doing horrible things, like trying to kill hundreds of innocent children at one point in this story. Or are we supposed to be sympathizing with Inferno Squad, who is basically trying to keep that oppressive empire in power? Who do you think we're supposed to sympathize with? Who did you end up sympathizing with the most, and why? I know that's a lot to throw at you, but let's start with you, Meg.
I mean, do we have to pick sides?
Yes.
Really? I mean,
no, you really don't. But
no, I mean, honestly, the way that I felt at the end of the book was I really sympathized with like Aiden as like an individual character, like regardless of what side she was on, like Empire wise.
okay.
And like I guess I felt that way with all the characters. Like basically for me, it just comes down to like everything is terrible and they're all going through terrible things. And I don't know if we were necessarily meant to be on one side or the other. Maybe the point is that no matter what side you're on, bad things are going to happen and you're going to maybe have to do terrible things that you don't want to do. And I mean, that's where I'm sitting. I could be totally just off in my own world. I don't know, but
Sure. No, that's a fair answer. Absolutely. Eric, what do you think?
I'm going to do a little bit of a cop-out answer and say I think we're supposed to be on the side of the rebellion. Because I think this book shows us the extremism of the Dreamers is wrong. The tactics of the Empire are wrong. So what's left is the rebellion that we grew up with. It is the people that fight when they have to, but will not go to the extent that the Dreamers will.
Okay.
And I think that that's also kind of where Aiden, the seeds of that begin here with Aiden, and then eventually blossom in the Battlefront II campaign. And I think that, Meg, you're absolutely right. I think as far as that goes, I do identify with her most individually because she has seen the brutality of the Dreamers and says, absolutely not. That's not what I am. But then at the end of the book, she sees what Gideon will do. And she says, I'm not that either. So she's in this weird in-between. And it's not until she gets to the game campaign that she finds where she actually is meant to be, which is in the rebellion, which is fighting against evil, but not taking yourself down to the level of true evil, which I think is ultimately the purpose of not only this book, but of Star Wars as a whole.
Wow. Well, that got deep.
Yeah,
living no, fantastic. I like that answer a lot. Heather?
Well, I don't know if I can top that. I'll just say what's on my mind.
Skip.
So, I don't know if you're meant to pick a side. I know it's called Inferno Squad, but like that whole ordeal at the end where the squad practically kills the Dreamers and makes you feel bad about it. One thing that I do remember is that it kind of seemed like on either side, Inferno Squad and the Dreamers, there's always like someone who's just super cool and rational and someone who's just super uptight and aggressive. And I think it's to kind of show the gray area of things. I know one of you guys mentioned, right? It kind of seems like with a lot of this new content coming out, Disney's trying to focus more on like, rather than black and white, just what's in the middle, not really picking a side, but just kind of
Mhm.
going with your own morals, your own characteristics, traits, and all that. So by the end of this book, I wasn't really rooting for anyone. I wasn't really attached to any certain character. I was kind of just along for the ride. I was just kind of seeing how all of the characters reacted to certain things and, how they all ended up and kind of took it as a lesson, I guess.
Yeah, no, and
Mhm.
that's a perfect segue really into my next question is exactly how you described, Heather, is if you really go back and look at the original Star Wars, it was very black and white morality. It was very clear who we're rooting for. It was very clear who we were rooting against. But really the new stuff, so yeah, like this book, like The Last Jedi, it really is going more to a gray area, and not just gray Jedi, as they're
Mhm.
described, but all characters. Um, do you like that or not? And does that erode any of the initial message of the original trilogy? Eric, what do you think?
I think that I like it because it shows how storytelling kind of evolves. Like the old Star Wars movies were very much based on a lot of westerns, a lot of samurai.
Hmm.
Stories like George Lucas was very influenced by a lot of Kurosawa stuff like that, and that had a little more black and white stuff. Um, Whereas nowadays, like storytelling has changed. A lot of our favorite movies in the popular culture of the last few decades are kind of grayer.
Hmm.
Especially a lot of like spy movies where who's betraying who's a double agent, who's really doing what, which is what Rogue One really did very well. Um, so I think ultimately, it's not necessarily me liking one better, but I think it's the movies that have to be made right now. I think that we owe it to the audience to write stories that honestly a lot of kids need to see as they're growing up, as they're learning morality. Like we learned the rebellion was good and the empire was bad, and and that kind of helped us form our minds. Whereas kids nowadays, it's like, hey, the world's a little more complicated, and I'm sorry that, but you have to know that, so you have to keep an eye out for people like this, which is why I think stuff like Rogue One, stuff like the Cassian series that we're getting, oh my god, I can't wait for that, are so important because Cassian says, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old because he wasn't lucky enough to be born on a planet that was peaceful.
Hmm.
That just happened. He had to fight all the time, and there's no way that makes it in earlier Star Wars. You know, so stuff like Inferno Squad is saying, yeah, sometimes people do start out on the wrong side, and eventually they might come to the right side, but it might take a while and some horrible stuff. So it's more complex, but I think it's needed.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And um, you mentioned really that. Well, let me come back to this because I want to hear from everyone.
Mhm.
Um, but Meg, is it diluting the original kind of message, if you will, of the original trilogy?
I don't think so. I think you kind of, like Eric said, you have to kind of look at it as like it's all this is all one big Star Wars story, but they're their own separate parts. And I think you're going to get different messages from different parts or even from different movies within the same era. Um, so no, not at all. But I think, yeah, it's definitely, I keep using the word refreshing, but that's just what comes to mind at the moment. It's like, it's different, but in a good way. I think we need
Mhm.
to be reminded that, like, like the real world, it's not always black and white. There are people that are not good people who do good things, and there are good people who do not good things. That's how it is. And I think it makes for really good storytelling, but it's also a very accurate reflection of how things really are, which I think is important, even in fictional things. So
Yeah. Heather, do you agree?
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Um, Focusing on that middle ground is a lot more realistic because the whole light versus dark, it makes for a good story, but I mean, Disney, they do have to adapt. Like Eric said today, things are a little more complicated. And Disney, I mean, they are catering Star Wars to kids, and what better way to teach kids that, hey, sometimes you kind of just have to think for yourself. You can't just be one-sided. And honestly, the light versus dark, I mean, if you focus on that too much, it gets a little too played out. So it's even more interesting to focus in that gray area because it's a little more unpredictable. You don't really know what's going to happen. So I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's interesting, though, that it's not only sort of changing the message of the story, but it is in a way also going back and almost redefining what the message was in the original material. Because I think it was Meg, you brought up earlier how at one point in this story they talk about how the Rebel Alliance blew up, a Death Star, and there were hundreds of thousands of innocent people on that Death Star who were really just doing their job. So I thought it was really interesting at one point. Someone in the Empire was saying that the Rebel Alliance was too, and I wrote this down, quote, crippled by their own moral code, end quote, to be a true threat to the Empire. And they're saying this after the Death Star has been blown up. I mean, are they really crippled? Or, I don't know. I felt like this story and Lost Stars as well, which was brought up, kind of made me go back and look at the Rebel Alliance in a different light. And it's kind of alarming that I never really thought about that too much beforehand. But
yeah, it's interesting because we definitely are living in a time right now where that's the question on a lot of people's minds is like, where does moral high ground get you sometimes? And is there ever an excuse to play dirty? And is there ever an excuse to, like, what the Dreamers are doing? They've all had people who were murdered, who were murdered by the Empire. And at a certain point, do you just look at people dying and say, well, I'm still going to try to be civil. I'm still going to try to, put on my big boy pants every day and be the bigger person, when the other team is saying, well, cool, I'll just kill you. And I think that those are thoughts we never had in the original trilogy. Maybe because it was, we had the benefit of not having to be that complex. But nowadays, because so much more stuff is out in the open as far as how depraved some people can get, as far as like how deep certain evils can go, that's kind of filtering its way into Star Wars a little bit of like, man, the moral high ground is really awesome, but I get sometimes why people could falter, even the heroes. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. So here's kind of my last question for us, guys, because we do need to sort of wrap up here. But essentially, we were promised, at least in the trailers for the Battlefront 2 game, and so I kind of assumed with this story as well that we would be getting Imperial characters as your protagonists, essentially, right? Or your main characters who you're following along with. But then, of course, they end up defecting and going to the Rebel Alliance. Does it take away from the Empire at all in your view of them that we're seeing more and more of these Imperial characters basically not be able to stay with the Empire but end up defecting? So we saw it in Lost Stars, we saw it here. Is it good that we're seeing this humanity in the Empire, or how is that changing your view? Heather, why don't you start for us?
Well, you probably know what my answer is going to be.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
So, yes, I definitely hated the advertising for the game because it kind of felt like a double betrayal. Because yeah, they did promise a game from the view of the Empire, and with Aiden's betrayal, I mean, there was already a betrayal in the game, and then I felt betrayed. Because I'm like, okay, well, now I'm playing as a rebel. What happened? I'm all for the good side. Like, I'm not totally bad, you guys. So, I just, it's kind of seems like we don't get too many point of views from someone who is just strictly Imperial to the end. I know we had Tarkin, but I don't even believe that he's fully Imperial. He has like his own ascendancy thing going on. So I mean, well, actually, I haven't read Tarkin yet, so maybe I should like jump on that. But yeah, I felt like I was promised a game that was meant to be one way, and then it kind of yanked it out from under me. I mean, it was still a really good game. I think someone just needs to work on their advertising a bit because I'm trying to think, wasn't there something else that came out recently where it was advertised one way, but it didn't quite turn out? Maybe I'm thinking of Solo,
Everything?
where
No, I'm just
yeah, pretty much.
everything ever put out.
But I remember like the trailers to Solo. I mean, it was still a good movie, but they put so much emphasis on Lando and not enough on Han, and that was kind of
Sure.
misleading. So, I mean, I really wish they would just be honest with their advertising, really. But I mean, I still love the game regardless, but hopefully somewhere down the line I can get my actual Imperial point of view without any betrayal. So, please.
Okay, good. So that's what you want. You want a true Imperial story.
Mhm.
Meg, did it work for you? Are you okay with seeing these people defecting? Do you need to see just a through and through Imperial character like Heather wants?
First of all, Heather, have you not read Phasma? Because if you haven't,
I have not.
That's true. That's so true.
But isn't that First Order?
yes, but I mean, it is kind of a good example of you get like a character that is totally not good at all. But anyway,
and is Meg's favorite.
I mean,
I do need to pick
Charles
that
and I are the moral compass of this life.
That's keep her steady, Eric. Keep her steady.
okay, to be fair, like for the like if you're thinking marketing wise for like this game, you can't give away that she defects and you're all of a sudden going to be playing as a rebellion because that gives away like the twist and the main surprise. So like, I guess it makes sense that you can't like give that away, but I do agree that that's kind of annoying. Does it take away from that at all? I don't know. I mean, I think it's nice to have like that point of view, you know, from an Imperial, but like I think it's still interesting to see like what they do and how they act after they've left and gone to the other side. For me, like I wasn't disappointed or anything. I still thought it was interesting and like it's still the same character. I mean, she's making a big decision and going in this other direction, but I mean, once I finish the game, maybe I'll have more thoughts. But
We'll do this again sometime.
Yeah.
In like 5 more months.
All right, Eric, are you kind of same mindset?
Ish. I think for me, Star Wars at its core really means hope. You know, I mean, literally the first movie, right? A New Hope. Cassian and Jyn, rebellions are built on hope. And I think that all these stories about Imperials that turn have within them the hope that someone evil can become good again, that ultimately good can win out. And I think if we do get a story from an Imperial point of view that is strictly Imperial the whole way through, it kind of takes that away and says, no, like some people aren't going to change and evil is going to win. And I think that's kind of antithetical to the whole universe in general. I think that regardless if you're with the Jedi, with the Rebellion, with the smugglers, like whatever time period you are in Star Wars, that is kind of the through line, because at the end of the day, it is a fantasy story meant for, you know, the current reading climate. And I think we all need a little bit of hope. And I think that if we do get that story that says, nope, that's gone, we're going to get rid of that possibility, and evil is evil is evil, ha ha ha. To me, that is less Star Wars than, you know, what some people that are not in the Utini Cantina have been saying is not Star Wars about the current movies and stuff. So,
Sure.
Yeah, I think I need that.
I think I'm losing you guys. Can you hear me?
What? Yeah, you're good.
I can hear you.
All right.
I got you.
Sorry, lost you guys for a second there. So that was pretty much the last thing I wanted to get to. So let's just go around and close this like we close all of these. Give me your 1 to 10 rating of this book again, and if it has changed, tell me why. And otherwise, just give me any final thoughts that y'all have on this book. Let's start with Meg this time.
I originally gave it a 6, and I think I'll bump that up to a 7, just because I don't know, like it's not like my favorite Star Wars book that I've ever read, and it's not honestly the most memorable one to me. So like I didn't remember some of the small details that we talked about before. but having talked about it and kind of gone into some of the deeper themes and things like that, I think it deserves a 7. But I'm definitely going to go after this, finish the campaign, because I really feel like I need to do that now.
The marketing works.
It's really short.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll leave you to do that. We'll see it next time we see you. You'll just be like bloodshot eyes, like you've just finished 7 or 8 hours to power through it. Okay, Heather, what's your rating?
So I started off at an 8, and during our discussion, my rating was kind of like on a meter, like, oh no, oh maybe it's not so bad. But I'm gonna stick at my 8, because I feel like even discussing it now, I admire this book as much as I did back when I first read it, and just paired with the campaign, just looking at it from a big picture, it is a very impressive story, and I really did enjoy it. So yeah, I'll stay with my 8.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my 8.5. I liked it a lot. I think they're good characters. I do prefer Golden's Dark Disciple a little more. If you haven't read that, definitely a huge recommendation there. We have a deep dive actually article on the blog on that novel coming up in the next month or so. So keep an eye out for that. But Golden is definitely kind of established herself in the writers that I want to keep a track of if new products are hopefully announced. And Aiden is a character I really enjoy. So if we do, I don't know, I highly doubt we're going to get another book with any of these characters again, but I would be stoked to read it. And I think that as far as the new canon goes, it's a good addition. I'm definitely a fan.
Great. Absolutely. And just to finish this thing out, I am going to stick with my 7. There are things I liked about it. There are things that I probably missed about it, honestly, because I listened to the audiobook, and I do not plan on doing that next time, because I can kind of phase in and out of it a little bit. So I'd like to sit down with the story again sometime, the actual physical copy, and see what I think about it then. But okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me.
You're not going to say anything about the gargoyles?
I still don't understand the gargoyles. That was my other question. Do you want to touch on the gargoyles? Why were I call them gargoyles / golems?
Well, I was looking at the
Golems.
prompt, and your opinion was like in all caps, and I was like, wow, like you were really feeling it.
Yeah,
I would.
a little PS here, guys. Charles, tell us about the golems.
So, okay, all right. So the golems, essentially, Piakau and Dell stumbled across these stone things with crystal organs in their bodies, and they kind of just stumbled upon them, like, I don't know, 60% through the story, and they're like, hey, these things are weird, yeah, let's study these things. And then they never showed up really again until the very end of the story, when they just, like, crawled out of the ground and carried everyone's bodies away. So, basically, my question with this was, why were they in the story, other than they kind of had a nice little, like, bittersweet addition to the end of the story, that basically all these characters we cared about were literally cradled and, like, carried away? What was their purpose? Does anyone know?
Like, I couldn't help but laugh at the prompt when I got to that part, and when I was writing my notes, I don't know if you can see, but I literally just put, I've got nothing.
Okay. For my point, I mean, narratively, it's definitely to get Dell and Pico in a room together. Like, to give them more time to bond is definitely narratively the structure, which is not a good reason. But I think I think the actual good reason is to kind of make the world, the planet they're on, a little more 3-dimensional, a little more fleshed out, and to kind of add this in a book that's all about kind of the callousness of death, about the body count. We could kill 400 kids, or we could kill anyone in this camp, or I would kill you in this moment. To see a race that actually reveres death a lot, that you think is like worms coming to eat bodies all the time. It turns out it's actually this, like, benevolent race of sentience, essentially, that are their only purpose is to kind of revere the dead. So I think that's a nice contrast to the carnage that the Dreamers and the Empire are willing to do with these stone golems that only want people to rest. So that's what I got.
Okay, Eric, you have given me a new hope in
Yes!
this moment for
Charles's
this.
rating is safe.
I'll take that.
Okay, so I think on that high note,
Yeah.
I think we should go ahead and close. So thank you guys for joining me here and answering some of these questions I had. And thank you to anyone who is watching this either live here in the Facebook Cantina or subsequently on our YouTube page. All of these end up going on our YouTube page. So thank you guys so much for joining us and potentially reading along. We don't have a book picked out for next month just yet, but we will. So keep an eye out for that. And of course, you can get that and any of your other Star Wars book needs through Utini. Just head on over to utini.com. You can also check out our awesome blog that Eric runs and that Meg writes a lot for. And of course, that Heather puts on all of our social media pages that she helps manage. All right, guys. So that is all we have for tonight. For everyone here and for everyone at Utini, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, may the Force be with you. Bye, guys.
See ya.